He doesn't just tell you he loves you. He doesn't just show up on your birthday or say sweet things after a fight. When a man truly loves you, something deeper shifts, something subtle, almost invisible. His world reorganizes itself around your emotional presence. Not out of obligation, not out of fear of losing you, but because somewhere within, his soul has recognized yours. And once this recognition happens, his behaviors become portals, invitations, signs, and not the kind you find in romance novels, but those ancient, tender movements of a man whose heart has surrendered its defenses. A man in love becomes quiet in a new way, not silent with disconnection, but quiet with reverence. He listens differently. The world could be screaming around him, but when you speak, everything else softens. He listens not to solve you, not to fix you, but to feel you. And in that listening, you'll find something sacred, because a man who truly loves you begins to treat your voice like a temple. He hears the meaning between the words, the pauses pregnant with pain or memory, and he meets you there. Not with solutions, but with presence. He no longer needs to impress you. He no longer measures his worth in what he can prove, provide, or protect against. Instead, he begins to offer his most terrifying gift, his vulnerability. He tells you where he's ashamed, where he failed, where he still feels like a scared little boy in a world that taught him to be hard. He doesn't need you to rescue him from that boy, but he trusts you enough to let him be seen. And in that exposure, love deepens. Love becomes truth. He stops performing the masculine act, the one society gave him, the one that says he must dominate, suppress, or lead without listening. No, when he truly loves, he sheds that mask. He becomes something softer but more powerful, a man who is not afraid to be moved by love, a man who allows himself to cry beside you, not because he's weak, but because something about your presence has unwrapped the grief he's held for too long. He starts making decisions that include your emotional weather. He no longer asks only, "What do I want?" but, "How does this affect her?" Not in codependence, not in self-erasure, but in sacred consideration. He starts thinking in we, and not just in moments of crisis or passion, but in the silent, ordinary choices of daily life. Should I take this job? Should I say yes to this trip? Should I speak or stay quiet? And in all of it, your presence is there, not because you asked to be, but because he placed you there. He protects your softness, not by shielding you from life, but by refusing to become the storm that wounds you. He manages his own anger. He examines his projections. He looks at how his past might be distorting the way he sees you. And he does that inner work not for applause, but because love has made him more honest. A man who truly loves you will face the shadows in himself that could destroy the intimacy between you. That's not weakness. That's devotion. He doesn't demand you shrink. When your power rises, when your voice gets louder, when your soul starts shedding old skins, he doesn't pull away. He doesn't call you too much. He watches in awe. Maybe with fear, yes, maybe with confusion, but not with control. Because a man who truly loves you doesn't compete with your expansion. He reveres it, even when it scares him, even when it triggers his old stories. He stays. He remembers the little things, the texture of your sighs, the way your fingers tremble when you're overwhelmed, the stories you told him once in passing that no one else remembered. Why? Because to him, your soul has left fingerprints on his memory. You are not just a person. You're a myth he's learning to read. And so he studies you, not to control, but to cherish. He apologizes without making himself the victim. When he hurts you, he doesn't say, "I didn't mean it." He says, "I see how I hurt you and I will understand it better." He doesn't hide behind intention. He steps into impact. Because when a man loves you, your pain matters. Not because it threatens his comfort, but because your heart is sacred to him. And to witness it breaking, even a little, is unbearable, unless he meets you in that rupture. He's not afraid to disappoint you if it means staying honest. He doesn't just say yes to keep the peace. He tells the truth, even when it trembles. Because a man who truly loves you wants you to love the real him, not the mask he once wore to earn approval. And so he tells you when he's unsure. He tells you when he's not ready. He tells you when he's afraid. Not to push you away, but to pull you closer into the messy realness of love that's not always pretty, but always profound. He watches. You sleep. Not in a cinematic, overdone way, but in a quiet, sacred one. He looks at your resting face and feels the weight of your trust. He wonders what dreams you're having. He marvels at the fact that someone as complex, brilliant, and wild as you has chosen to rest beside him. It humbles him. And in those moments, something ancient softens in him. He is not just your partner. He becomes your witness. He chooses you again and again, not just once, not just in the beginning, but daily, in the subtle ways, in the invisible hours, when you're not at your best, when you're distant, when you're angry. He doesn't walk away every time it's hard. He stays not because he's trapped, but because something sacred lives in the hard parts. He knows real love isn't convenience. It's commitment through chaos. He gets curious about your pain, not just when it bursts into arguments, but when it shows up as silence, withdrawal, or edge. He doesn't punish you for your wounds. He leans in to understand them. He wants to know what made you close off, what taught you to hide, what stories you carry in your body that you haven't dared to speak. And he doesn't do this as a therapist. He does this as a lover who knows that to love you, he must understand the ghosts that still follow you home. He doesn't flinch when you get dark, when your shadow emerges, when your rage comes out of nowhere, when you say things you regret. He doesn't spiritual bypass your humanity. He holds space, he breathes, he stays. He knows that the woman he loves is not just light and laughter, but also fire and flood. And he refuses to abandon her when the storm rises. He allows himself to be changed by your love. He doesn't just keep loving in his own way, he evolves. He pays attention to how you receive love, how you feel safe, how you unfold. He adjusts, he listens, he practices. Not to become someone he's not, but to become someone who can love you more deeply. Because to him, love is not a fixed act. It's a living devotion. He doesn't vanish when conflict arises. He doesn't become emotionally unavailable, stonewall, or ghost you when things get messy. A man who truly loves you understands that rupture is part of intimacy. He doesn't punish you with silence or distance. He stays close, not to win, not to be right, but to repair. He holds the thread of connection even when the fabric frays, and in doing so, he teaches your nervous system something new. That love doesn't have to disappear when there's pain. He makes space for your sacred rage. He doesn't pathologize your fire. He doesn't reduce your emotional expression to drama or hormones. He honors it, even when it's loud, even when it scares him, because he knows that beneath every scream is a story, and beneath every story is a wound. And if he can sit with that fire instead of trying to extinguish it, you might finally begin to believe that your intensity isn't something to shrink, it's something to revere. He speaks about the future with your heart and mind, not just about houses or finances or plans, but about emotional longevity. He wonders aloud how to grow with you, not around you. He doesn't just fantasize about travel or children. He asks, how can I become the kind of man who holds your evolution with care? Because to him, the future isn't just what you build, it's how you become. Together. He tells the truth even when it risks his image. He doesn't curate a persona just to keep your love. He tells you when he's uncertain, when he's ashamed, when he still has work to do. And in that vulnerability, he creates a bridge where your truth can walk too. Because in real love, masks suffocate. Only truth breathes. He celebrates your solitude. He doesn't interpret your need for space as rejection. He trusts it, he even encourages it. He knows that a woman who returns to herself is not a threat to the relationship, but a source of power within it. He lets you be alone, not because he doesn't care, but because he deeply does. Because he knows your soul doesn't belong. To him, it belongs to you. He respects your boundaries the first time, not as a favor, not as a test, but as a sacred yes. He doesn't guilt you into over-explaining. He doesn't sulk in passive punishment. He hears your no and honors it, because he knows that love without consent is control. And a man who truly loves you wants your freedom more than your compliance. He doesn't flinch at your tears, doesn't panic. He doesn't disappear, he softens. He knows that your tears are not inconveniences. They are holy waters that deserve gentleness. He doesn't rush you through them. He doesn't fix or analyze. He simply remains. A presence. A breath. A grounding force that tells your inner child, you are not alone anymore. He doesn't fall in love with your potential. He falls in love with your present. He doesn't try to fix you, mold you, or push you faster through your healing journey. He meets you as you are, messy, in progress, still searching. And he doesn't make your becoming a prerequisite for his devotion. To him, you are worthy even in your unraveling. He reclaims softness as strength. In a world that taught him to be numb, to be stoic, to be aggressive, your love invites him back into his emotional body. And he accepts. Not all at once, not without fear, but over time he lets you see the parts of him that cry, long, ache. And in doing so, he doesn't become less of a man. He becomes more whole. He doesn't weaponize your past. When you tell him your story, your trauma, your shame, your mistakes, he holds it with respect. He never throws it back in your face. He never uses your wounds to win arguments. Because he knows that to love someone's soul, you must protect their history, not erase it, not judge it, but carry it with reverence. He does the invisible work, the kind no one sees, the quiet reflection, the hard conversations with himself, the therapy, the journaling, the internal battles, not for praise, not to impress, but because he knows that loving you well means knowing himself better. And that inner labor is how he makes room for a deeper love. He celebrates your voice even when it disrupts his comfort. When you name a truth he hadn't seen, when you set a new standard, when you say, this no longer works for me. He doesn't shut you down. He listens. He breathes. He adapts. Not because he's trying to be perfect, but because he's committed to being real. And real love requires real listening. He's willing to be wrong, not because he's weak, but because he's awake. Awake to the ways his conditioning might hurt you. Awake to the blind spots he carries. Awake to the impact of his presence. He doesn't need to dominate to feel secure. He doesn't need to be right to feel strong. He knows that love grows in the soil of humility. He doesn't use love as a transaction. He doesn't say, I did this, so you owe me that. He loves without a ledger, without a scoreboard, without keeping tally of emotional debts. His love is not a contract. It's a gift, freely given, fully lived. He trusts your intuition. When you sense something, when you feel off, when your body speaks a truth his mind hasn't caught up to, he doesn't dismiss you. He doesn't call you crazy. He listens. He learns. He respects that your wisdom doesn't always come with evidence, but that doesn't make it less real. Because love isn't about proof. It's about presence. He allows love to change the pace of his life. He stops rushing. He stops hustling for worth. He slows down. He notices. He prioritizes peace, not just productivity. Because being with you has taught him something his past never did. That love is not an interruption to ambition. It's the soil from which real legacy grows. He doesn't turn intimacy into ownership. He doesn't confuse closeness with control. He understands that your life, your choices, your body, your emotions are yours. And loving you means honoring that sovereignty. Always. Even when it's hard. He shows up without being asked. Not in grand gestures, but in the little moments. The check-in text. The hand on your back when you cry. The food brought when you're too tired to cook. The way he remembers your deadlines, your triggers, your dreams. He doesn't wait to be reminded, because, to him, love is attention. And he's paying attention. He learns your nervous system. He starts to notice when you're flooded, when you're fawning, when you're freezing. He doesn't get defensive, he gets curious. He asks, "What do you need right now?" Not because he wants to fix you, but because he wants to be a safe place where your body can exhale. He doesn't fear your brilliance. He doesn't dim your light to protect his ego. He watches you rise and cheers from the soul. He doesn't compete. He compliments. He doesn't feel small in your presence. He feels inspired. Because a man who truly loves you sees your power as part of the relationship's magic, not a threat to it. He keeps choosing the hard conversations, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it would be easier to shut down. He leans in. He says, "I want to understand." Not to be right, not to fix, but to stay connected. Because connection, not comfort, is his compass when he truly loves you. He values repair over perfection. He knows mistakes will happen, tensions will rise, words will be said. But instead of pretending it didn't happen or minimizing the rupture, he returns. He initiates healing. He names the impact. He opens space for both of you to feel seen. Because to him, love isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of repair. He doesn't try to be your everything. He knows that no one person can meet all of your needs. He honors your friendships, your practices, your solitude. He celebrates your wholeness beyond the relationship. Because a man who truly loves you doesn't want to consume your life. He wants to enrich it. Not by becoming your world, but by walking beside you as you expand into it. He brings reverence to your body, not just desire, not just pleasure, but reverence. He learns your boundaries. He notices your breath, your tension, your consent in every moment. He doesn't rush, he doesn't take, he attunes. Because your body is not his to conquer. It is a temple he is lucky to be invited into. And he never forgets that. He loves without ownership. He doesn't view your love as proof of his worth. He doesn't clutch it with fear. He loves with open hands, with faith, with presence. He knows you could leave, but he doesn't let that fear make him possessive. He lets it make him present, fully, every day, because love is a choice, and he keeps choosing. He doesn't collapse when you express your pain. He doesn't make it about him. He doesn't spiral into guilt to avoid accountability. Instead, he stands in it, rooted, soft, willing. He hears, "You're hurt," and instead of explaining it away, he receives it. Not to be shamed, but to understand, to grow, to love you more wisely. He studies your silence, not suspiciously, but attentively. He knows that when you go quiet, there's something underneath. He doesn't push, he doesn't prod, he becomes patient. A stillness beside your stillness, an invitation. Because a man who truly loves you knows that silence isn't emptiness. It's often a sacred pause waiting to be honored. He recognizes that loving you means loving your lineage, your ancestors, your culture, your rituals. He doesn't ask you to assimilate into his world. He makes space for yours. He learns your stories. He honors your history. He asks about your mother, your grandmother, your roots. Because to love you is to love the village that raised you. He becomes a mirror, not a master. He doesn't tell you who to be. He reflects back what he sees with love. He says, "I see your power. I see your fear. I see your truth." And he doesn't force you to change. He holds space for your unfolding. Because he knows your path is sacred, and you don't need saving, you need witnessing. He honors your no as much as your yes. In love, in intimacy, in daily decisions. He understands that consent isn't a one-time checkbox. It's a living dialogue. He doesn't punish your refusal. He doesn't question your limits. He respects them, because he knows that love rooted in pressure is not love, it's control. He gives your dreams room to breathe, even when they scare him, even when they mean distance or change or risk. He doesn't ask you to dim them. He asks how he can support them, because your becoming is not an inconvenience to him. It's an honor to witness. And in your rising, he rises too. He doesn't expect gratitude for basic decency. He's not looking for applause every time he chooses kindness, presence, or honesty. He does it because it's who he's becoming. Because love has recalibrated his compass. He's not here to be praised. He's here to be true. He heals with you, not for you. He doesn't carry the savior complex. He knows your healing is yours, and his is his. But he walks with you, he listens. He holds you after breakthroughs and breakdowns. He creates space for your process without rushing it. And he does the same for himself, because he knows that love is a shared awakening. He lets you change your mind about everything, about the relationship, about yourself, about life. He doesn't panic, he doesn't pressure. He lets you grow. He lets you evolve. And in doing so, he proves that his love isn't for who you were. It's for who you're becoming, even when he doesn't understand it yet. He welcomes your feedback, even when it stings. He doesn't shut down or get defensive when you tell him how you feel. He listens, he reflects, he thanks you. Because to him, feedback isn't criticism, it's intimacy. A chance to love you more accurately. He holds your contradictions without needing to resolve them. He knows you can be both soft and sharp, bold and broken, joyful and grieving. He doesn't ask you to pick one. He holds all of you. And in doing, so you begin to hold yourself with more compassion too. He doesn't need to fix everything. Sometimes he just sits beside you, quietly, while the world feels like it's falling apart. He holds your hand. He breathes. He says, "I'm here." And in that stillness, you find a kind of healing that no solution could ever bring. He chooses presence over performance. He may not say the perfect thing. He may not always know what to do, but he's there, awake, engaged, not scrolling, not distracted, just present. And in a world of noise, that presence is love made visible. He's proud of the emotional labor. He doesn't see growth as a burden. He sees it as a privilege, to unlearn, to listen, to try again. He's not trying to get it over with. He's becoming someone new, not for you, but with you. Because love to him is the greatest evolution. He sees love not as a destination, but a daily choice, a path, a practice. He wakes up every day and says, "How can I love her better today?" Not out of obligation, but out of awe, out of devotion, out of the quiet miracle of having found someone like you in a world like this. And in the end, the truest sign that he loves you is that your soul begins to feel safer. Not every moment, not without bumps, but over time something inside you starts to soften, starts to trust, starts to bloom. Because when a man truly loves you, your nervous system knows. So ask yourself, is your heart being witnessed or just tolerated? Is your voice being honored or just heard? Is your soul being loved or just managed? If this touched something deep inside, let it land. Let it settle. Let it shape your standards. And if you're ready to receive this kind of love or to give it, share in the comments below. What does true love feel like in your body? And if you felt seen by this channel is your sacred space. Subscribe, stay close, and walk this path with us. Because here, we love from the soul.